sure that they knew that they had their right to voting, because you think that you don't have the right, that's a form of voter suppression. And so the idea was that people would get taught these courses. It has like, basic civics 101, and how does the electoral college work, voting rights history, how to fill out a voter registration card. And so those classes were established the year before I joined Chicago. And I was so intrigued by all of that I asked, can I be a part of this policy work? They were like, well, we actually need somebody to, help us out with our Unlock Civics agenda. And so I came on board with the team, and a lot of the bills that we were working on are at the intersection of folks who were either currently or formerly incarcerated and our civic systems. And so one of those things was our voting in prison bill, which would restore voting rights to people who are incarcerated. And so we were looking at different states that already had voting in prison. So Maine and Vermont are the two states in the country that a lot of people were currently incarcerated to vote. And one thing that's important to note is that Maine and Vermont are statistically or demographically the most white states in the United States. And so they never got their right to vote taken away. And so part of the conversation was doing research. Why is it that people in prison can't vote, and how did this start? And it was after the Civil War when Black people were getting their rights and states were getting very, what's the word I'm looking for? They were getting very technical with how they can take voting rights away from people. And during this time, a lot of states were rewriting their state constitution, and so they put language inside of their state constitutions that banned people from, and at first it was just certain offenses that they thought that white people didn't commit, and so and offenses that they were typically getting Black people on. So we know that there's a racial disparity, and that's why these laws exist. And so, so I worked with the Civics Coalition. That's how I got to meet amazing organizers like Avalon, and so many other groups that work on issues for folks who are justice impacted. And then also through that work, I was able to go into Stateville and work with Dr. Rivers and the Stateville think tank. And these are the guys who were writing legislation and basically kind of consulting us. They were doing the work that they could from the inside and just giving us our charge of what we needed to do on the outside. So that's kind of how I got started.
Thank you for that. And so, like the Unlock Civics curriculum teaches people inside, so it prepares them to vote before they leave, right? Like it helps them to understand the importance of voting and showing up civically. And like iLarge, what we do is we organize inside the prisons. That's where our work lives. Like we have over 1,500 partners that are currently incarcerated in the Illinois Department of Corrections. We have partners in 88% of the prisons in this state, because we know that community is not just once we get released and we're on parole. Community is inside of our cages, and we're not going to exclude our people inside from doing the work of freeing us all, right? So my next question is, women, especially Black and brown women, have been at the center of voting rights activism in Illinois. From your vantage point at Chicago Votes, what are you seeing about the role women are playing in pushing for change, and how is that showing up in campaigns like the Race Act and the Vote in Her Honor?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's definitely true that Black and brown women have been at the center of this work, especially since I joined. And I want to take a moment to just acknowledge you and all of your great contributions to the work. You taught me so much about this work and how to approach it and how to make sure that we're centering and being equitable and accountable to the folks that we want to work with and do this work to get their voting rights. And I also want to acknowledge, Ms. Betty Magnus, Dr. Christina Rivers, Ami Gandhi. I'm sure there's so many people that I'm forgetting right now, but so many women have poured into this work. And I think it's important to note that, for different organizations who focus on voting rights, there are some who won't stand with us on this issue. And I think that, some of them are centered towards women, and I think that that's why it's so important that we have campaigns like Vote in Her Honor, because we have to put women at the forefront of this issue. This is a women's issue. And especially for those voting organizations that want to focus on issues for women, I think that it's important that they get into the fold and understand that women are sharing their stories and shaping the vision of this movement. And so I also want to thank you for letting Chicago Vote to be a part of the Vote in Our Honor movement. And so I'm really excited for us to continue pushing that forward.
To give you guys a little bit of understanding about what's the dynamics here in Illinois. So, we have too many people incarcerated in Illinois because there are too many people incarcerated, period. But for our women or people who are in our prisons designated for women, 80%, 80, are mothers. 76%, that's a 7 and a 6, are mothers of minor children, that's children under the age of 18. Our closest prison for women is in the middle of our state. 54% of the people that are in our prisons come from Chicago, which is not the middle of our state. So we have people parenting hundreds of miles away from their children. And now they can't determine who decides whether or not their local park gets a basketball court, or who's on the school board, right? We parent through the ballot box, and we have 100,000 children in the state of Illinois, approximately, who have a parent that has no ability to parent for them through the ballot box. I'm gonna repeat that. 100,000 children in the state of Illinois, their parent cannot parent them through the ballot box. And so I know that Illinois is not an anomaly on this issue. All of these states that have these racist, I'm gonna edit myself, these racist laws on the books that they call felony disenfranchisement, that's the impact that's happening on our kids. And we have to center that argument. We can't ignore the fact that they're being deprived of the ability to parent through the ballot box. So my next question is, Chicago Votes has been a key driver behind the RACE Act, which would restore, again, voting rights to people in prison. We like to say we had, you got to poll test everything, right? So the message that was poll tested is to say people completing their sentences in prison. That goes over well. So instead of saying people, incarcerated people, you say we're restoring voting rights to people completing their sentence in prisons. All right? Y'all learned something today. Can you talk about why this legislation matters and how women inside and outside the criminal legal system have shaped the movement behind it? And I also want to just note for the state of Illinois, all of the people from Illinois here, we did not amend our Constitution to enshrine felony disenfranchisement until 1970. That's a 19 and a 70. And it is not lost on me that that was on the heels of the civil rights movement. So when you think about these laws, like she said, they started out after Reconstruction thinking, oh, white people don't commit these crimes, so we don't keep people from voting that are convicted of these crimes, because these aren't the white people's crimes, these are the black and brown people's crimes, right? And that has now continued, and in this state was put in our Constitution in 1970 on the heels of the Civil Rights Movement. So yeah, just talk about why this legislation matters.
Yeah, and I do want to just quickly acknowledge the whole Unlock Civics Coalition. And Chicago Votes kind of, convenes the coalition, but I want to give credit to all the other amazing organizations. There's over 80 of them that are dedicated to ending felony disenfranchisement in Illinois. And so many of our great partners are also here in this room, so I just wanted to shout you all out and acknowledge you. But this is important for so many reasons. I think that right now we're looking at a federal government who wants to shrink the electorate, and so I think that states looking at how do we actually expand the electorate while other states and the nation at large wants to shrink it is a really important conversation, especially I think when we talk about some of the pushback and maybe like lack of support, I guess to say from the one of the reasons for them to support it is we're looking at an era where we have a president who wants to put his political enemies in prison, right, which would effectively strip them from their voting rights. And so I think that if the Democratic Party was serious about really protecting all people, they would really look at this issue in a different way. And so, besides the obvious reasons that it is a racial justice component, it also creates a power that people who are incarcerated have to impact and change what's going on in their conditions inside, which I think is something that, especially when we're organizing with and talking to folks inside, is something that they bring up often. They say we write to our legislators. Sometimes they don't get back to us, and if they saw me as a voter and someone who could hold them accountable, maybe we could get some more changes. And I think that also, like I mentioned, looking at this issue as a voting rights issue and the modern voting rights issue of our era is something that I think that more people in general, need to think about and consider. And so, I think that there's so many reasons, down to political power, down to the conditions, down to people who are mothers, who also, we know that the data shows that people who are connected to their community through voting are less likely to harm their communities. They're more likely to integrate into society. You have to feel like you belong in order to be able to build your life. And voting is a key aspect of what makes somebody a citizen. And so I think that when we have conversations with lawmakers, and something that Avalon taught me actually, is having the lawmakers explain to us why people in prison can't vote, as opposed to having us explain to them why they should. And a lot of times lawmakers, they stumble over their tracks because it's really hard to justify why somebody who's a citizen of this country shouldn't be able to participate in the most fundamental practice of our democracy. And so, thank you for that.
It's a lot of pretextual nonsense spewing from people's mouths when you ask them about this issue and others. So we're about to wrap up. We have one more question. So we're also watching the Inclusive Democracy Act on the federal level, which would expand voting rights nationwide to people who are completing their sentences in prison, right? So all federal elections would be opened up to people completing their sentences in prison. How do you see local organizing, like the work happening here in Chicago and in Illinois, connected to these bigger national conversations about democracy, inclusion, and who gets to participate?
Yeah, I think we're in a really interesting space in Illinois right now, where we're trying to, test the folks who are in power and how far they're willing to go and what changes they're willing to make. And we're seeing a lot of great wins here. They mentioned Clean Slate earlier. That's a great win for us. I think looking at Illinois as a place that's expanded jail access for people who are incarcerated, the civics courses for folks completing their sentence. I think that when we talk to lawmakers, sometimes they'll say, well, in Illinois we actually have it good because people who, at least once they finish their sentence, are able to vote, right? And I think that us saying, no, that's actually not enough, and it's actually not going to be enough until everyone is able to participate, creates also a conversation on a national level where you have states where those laws are a lot more restrictive. And so I think that these are the same conversations they have, with the Voting Rights Act, and saying can y'all wait on that? We can do this in layers. We can maybe not give everyone their right to vote. And I think that pushing forward and saying that there's no carve out, there's no end point until we get everything that we're asking for, I think helps to push the national conversation forward. And so I think that, setting the building blocks that we're having here, where we're all in community and learning from what each state is doing, helps to inform the national conversation. It puts pressure on our federal lawmakers and just people in our community that say, this actually does exist, people do have it, why can't we have it as well?
Yeah, and we have opportunities here, like we have some in Illinois, we have some people that are running for federal office. And we need to be thinking about these issues as constituents and as Illinoisans to say, hey, where do you stand on these particular issues, right? Durbin has retired, Danny Davis has retired, right? These are two key people in our state, and so who's running to replace them, and where do they live on our issues? And I'm not saying to endorse anybody. I know There's some C4 people in here, we not C4, so like, we can't go there. But I'm just saying, like, that's something for us to be thinking about. Like, it's not just about like how popular the people are, right, in the community who's running for office, but thinking about how do they actually stand on our particular issues. And for those who want to follow the Inclusive Democracy Act progress, it is going to be introduced, I think, either on the 22nd or the 23rd of this month by Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who was born in Chicago. I mean, you know, we outside, y'all. So that is all that we have. We really appreciate the opportunity for Freddie and I to have this conversation in front of you. We hope that we shared some information, help you understand like the work that's happening here in the state of Illinois, and maybe that can encourage you to take it back to your state if you're not here, to think about, you know what, I know we were thinking about doing this, but like maybe now is the time to like go for all of it. Because, or at least try to go for all of it, because you know, you never know. Like Michael Jordan, again, says, you know, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? And so it's an opportunity for us as a movement to think about how we want to lay and say, no, all of our people deserve the right to parent and do other things through the ballot box. So thank you all for your time and attention. We really appreciate this opportunity, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the Y'all ain't through me yet. So first off, I have to say this. When I first got into this work, a dear friend of mine, Andrea James, who's running for governor for the state of Massachusetts. Free her. She told me about, she was like, you gotta make this guy named Rich. I was like, Rich? Okay, she was like, sis, let me tell you. You gotta meet Rich. And we were able to meet, and I feel like, well, we both from the West Side. You know, I'm gonna leave that there. And so I felt like when we met, there was a genuine kinship there. And he has, even not even knowing, has really helped me to expand how I show up in this space. And I am grateful to this brother for that. And I could not introduce him without giving him flowers and showing him love and just articulating how important he has been to me and the work that I do, and how I show up as a Black woman from the west side of Chicago doing this work. So thank you, Rich, my brother, for being. And now I'm going to get to the typical intro. So Rich Wallace is the founder and executive director of Equity and Transformation, EAT, a Chicago-based nonprofit dedicated to building social and economic equity for Black workers in the informal economy. Fueled by lived experience and a relentless pursuit of justice, Richard has championed guaranteed income drug war reparations, criminal justice reform, and systemic change for communities pushed to the margins. An author and movement builder, Richard uses both the pen and the podium to challenge inequity and inspire transformation, one policy, one story, and one community at a time. It is indeed my honor and privilege to introduce the keynote speaker for today, Brother Rich Wallace.
But I'm honored to be in this room with you all, honored. And when I was tapped to be the keynote, I was thrown off. I was like, wait, what? Me? You know, also filled with gratitude, something about being seen, right? For the labor that you put in. Particularly for me as a low-bottom drunk, who just gave their chance a chance in 2006, man, it means something to be here now, right? I'm a formerly incarcerated person, a system-impacted person, and all I did is one day at a time woke up and did the next right thing. Somehow, right? So my name is Richard Wallace, and I'm the founder of Equity and Transformation, also known as EAT. Yeah! I also founded an organization that's called Black Men Build, and co-founded an organization called Black Roots Alliance. And all those folks are important to the story that I'll share with you today. I'm the son of Reverend Doris Green, aka Queen of the Kingdom, aka Sisters of Red, aka... A lot of people get confused by that because everybody is her son. I'm like, no, but I like, that's my mom. I'm the son of Reverend Doris Green, Eugene Wallace, and Minister Michael D. Smith. I'm the grandson of Woodrow Wallace, Alma Wallace from Jackson, Mississippi, and I'm the grandson of Columbus Taylor and Allie Johnson from Arkansas. Both sides of my family were raised in the Jim Crow South, and both are descendants of chattel slavery, and both call Chicago home. There's some interesting stories about how both of my grandfathers got to Chicago. Both of them were running from racism from the South. And here we are. But before I get started, I want to say a few things. One is that I've stood in rooms like this where I was asked to speak on behalf of people like you, people like me, rooms with good food, good intentions, where I was expected to translate the lived experience of incarceration into a language that did not disturb the peace. This is not that room. Nobody here needs me to explain that experience. You know what a cell sounds like when it closes. You know what it is to check a box on an application and watch the door close before you finish your sentence. You know what it is to be somebody's mother, daughter, or son driving 4 hours each way for a 45-minute visit. So I'm not going to represent you tonight. I'm going to think out loud with you, because I believe this room already holds the answers to the questions that keep me up at night. And my hope is that we can answer those questions together. I'm going to start with 28 words. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, ratified in 1865. We were taught that the 13th Amendment ended slavery. So let me read it to you. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime where the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist in the United States of America. Except for a punishment of a crime. Say it with me, say, except for a punishment of a crime. Except for a punishment of a crime. This is not a loophole. A loophole is an accident. That is a door. Somebody framed it, hung it, and left it standing there on purpose. And America walked right through it. I want y'all to pay attention to this. Because if the only way we are permitted to own a person is to convict them first, then the country does not need slavery anymore. It just needs convictions. And a country that needs convictions will manufacture them. I'm going to say that again. If the only way you are permitted to own a human being is to convict them first, then the country does not need slavery anymore. It just needs convictions. And this country, and they will manufacture them, right? So it did. Within months of emancipation, black codes, vagrancy laws, loitering laws, laws that made it a crime to be unemployed, to be idle, to be standing somewhere without a white man's permission, and then convict leasing. Black men arrested for walking down the road, sentenced to hard labor, and rented back to the same plantation and the same mines enslaved people of New Orleans were stolen from. Men still work in those fields today. The plantation did not close. It was rebranded, it got a warden instead of an overseer, a sentence instead of a bill of sale, and a constitutional amendment for government. That is the machine. And I need you to hold that blueprint in your mind, that ultimately the crime is invented, the conviction is manufactured, and the labor is extracted. And it's all perfectly legal right here in 2026. We used to speak of these things as specters, a ghost. Specters in history, things that might come back if we weren't vigilant about the fight. This is not a ghost, it is here. It has a body, it has a gavel, and it has a docket number. And I'm going to bring you current day. This is not what I'm talking about years ago. This is current.
Come on.
In June 2024, City of Grants Pass versus Johnson, the Supreme Court held 6-3 that a city may arrest you for sleeping outside even when there is no shelter bed for you to sleep in. Not for what you did, for where your body was at night when you had nowhere else to put it. That vagrancy law, that law brought us back to the Black Codes of 1866. And that happened in 2024. And they got to work. In the 2 years after grants passed, more than 350 cities and 14 states have passed measures criminalizing homelessness. That did not happen organically. These bills arrived in the state legislature, pre-written model legislation, copy and pasted, pushed by a billionaire-backed outfit called the Cisco Institute. I want y'all in this room, who in this room is an organizer? I want you to know that there are rooms just like this, filled with people who rose their hand that are organizing against you. Right? That are organizing against you. Last month, Louisiana signed one of the worst versions. I'm glad Ron was back. House Bill 211. They named it the Streets to Success Act. Governor Landry signed it in June. Sleeping in the public is now a crime in the state of Louisiana. First offense, $500, 6 months in jail, or both. Look at that land. For being homeless, for not having a place to sleep. And if you do it again, you will serve 1 to 2 years, and the statute says, in bracket, with hard labor. Hard labor in Louisiana in 2026 for the crime of being unhoused and falling asleep. Do you hear the machine? They invent the crime, manufacture the conviction, and extract the labor. The exception in the 13th Amendment preserves slavery, and bills like HB 211 are the fuel to keep it going. Now, roughly 60% of Louisiana's unhoused population is black, in a state that is 30% black. This is not a coincidence. This is a design. And the Supreme Court has ensured that black people can no longer vote our way out of this design. Louisiana versus Callis, April of this year, and another 6-3 vote. Something about that Supreme Court vote. 6-3 once again. The Supreme Court gutted the core enforcement of the Voting Rights Act and made it functionally legal for the state to dilute black voting power and call it partisanship. Now, I've always interpreted democracy to mean that if a decision is made that impacts your life, you have a right to play a role in how that decision is made. Voting is one of the ways that we play a role in how those decisions are made. But understand that those two rulings together, understand what they do. One says the state can arrest you for existing here. The other says you cannot vote your way out of that problem. They are literally closing all the exits right here in front of us right now. What my grandparents I'm speaking in a metaphor. Here's what I can't get over. This country cannot remember what it did to us. It cannot name the plantations. It can't count the dead. It can't locate the records. It cannot find the money. It cannot say the word reparations in reference to our suffering, but it remembers every crime I committed.
Yeah.
It remembers my case in 1997. It remembers the charges that were dismissed. It remembers an arrest that never became a conviction. It remembers it in a database and a background check and an algorithm that cost a landlord $19 to run. Simply so they could tell me and deny me access to rent an apartment where I want to live. 2.2 million adults in this country, 2.2 million Illinois residents carry a criminal record. Nearly 1 in 5 adults in the state. This country has perfect memory of our crimes and total amnesia of its own. That is not a flaw in the system, that is the system. And still, look at what we have built.
Let's go! Come on, Rick. Yep. Eat. That's easy.
Equity and transformation is led by formerly incarcerated people.
That part.
It's a manifestation of a father who died in Dixon State Prison, and a son who wrote letters to him from IYC St. Charles, and a mother who saw the importance of them having a relationship together, who drove to IYC St. Charles, and drove to Dixon Penitentiary, who gave letters. I couldn't mail a letter straight to Dixon. She had to send the letters to Dixon.
Yes, sir.
And ensured that we had a relationship. Right? Equity and transformation is street vendors, gig workers.
Eat.
Formerly incarcerated people who were written off by society coming together to organize as a political constituency. We fought for cannabis policy that remember who paid the price for prohibition. 800,000 records were expunged in the state of Illinois.
Let's go! Eat.
Through the Chicago Future Fund. And I gotta say something about that. We launched the first guaranteed income program in the nation for formerly incarcerated.
Say it again. Say it again.
No caseworker, no behavioral contract, no proving you were one of the good ones. And people used that guaranteed income to pay rent. They used it to pay for diapers, to pay for bus passes, and for one less impossible choice. It turns out that when you give people money, they use it to buy the things they need.
Eat.
Every study confirms what we already do.
That's right. Absolutely.
We established our own fellowship program because we were tired of formerly incarcerated people being the plus one to every national fellowship in the country.
Yeah, that part.
I will establish a fellowship program around criminal justice reform and exclude formerly incarcerated people
yeah.
Expungement. Second, expungement is not repair. It is a state agreeing to stop actively punishing you. That is not a gift. That is the bare minimum delivered late, and we had to fight a decade just to get it. Guaranteed income is not reparations. We model it how you can give direct cash payments. It's a demonstration. It is proof of concept. And a pilot program can be canceled by the next mayor, the next governor, the next budget line, and the next election. Every win in this list can be taken back, all of it, in one legislative session. I did not name our organization Equity and Transformation by accident. Equity without transformation is temporary. You see it, the racial DEI, the erasure. I didn't do that. Right? It is vulnerable. It is what we've been doing for the past 60 years, and its body continues to lose ground. So here's the question that keeps me up at night. How do we build racial justice that lasts? How do we make change so deep and foundational that the next political tide cannot take it away from us? And for me, the answer is reparations. I know that some of y'all may say, that's impossible. Read the room. This administration would never. We have organized, we have to organize within the realm of political possibility. I don't care about political possibility. I care about self-determination. And I question for y'all is, what has it got us? We've been fighting in the policy world for a minute. What has it got us? In 2024, 47% of black men were unemployed in the state of Illinois. Let's not forget this is a democratic state. We got a progressive caucus, we got a socialist caucus, we got a black caucus, and 47% of black men are detached from the only system in this country under advanced capitalism for us to survive. This is not an agrarian society. This ain't a barter and trade society. We have to sell our labor for wage, use that wage to buy the things that we need. Food, water, shelter. What does it mean? It should be a crisis if 47% of black men are not attached to that very system. In 2025, there were approximately 438 homicides in Chicago. 75% of the victims were black. We losing our people on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
The net worth of black households in Chicago is zero. What we winning? What have we won? These are real questions that keep me up at night. Chicago has a black population that has fallen by 500,000 since 1980. One of the most dramatic urban shifts in the U.S. history. The prison population has increased 450% since 1980, with the majority of the growth coming from black communities. Black women had the highest rate of maternal mortality in the state of Illinois. Medicaid recipients die almost 4 times as often as people with private insurance. That is the suffering of our people, and that is what I need to solve. The United States built its prosperity on stolen labor. That debt has never been settled. And it did not stop occurring in 1865. It kept running through convict leasing, through chain gang, through the redlining, through the war on drugs, and through every hour that we worked for pennies while we worked inside of those prison walls. Which means the people in this room are not the footnote of the reparations conversation. Y'all are the living evidence. There are people who want to talk about reparations for slavery as though it is a closed historic file, and will walk right past a formerly incarcerated person on their way to a home, as though we are the awkward relatives of the movement. As though past harms are real, but the present harms are not. No, the exception clause is the through line. It is the scene where slavery was stitched into criminal law and allowed to keep breathing. You cannot settle the debt without settling with the people it is still being collected from. I'll say that again. The exception clause is the through line. It is a scene where slavery was stitched into criminal law and allowed to keep breathing. You cannot settle the debt without settling it with the people you are still collecting it from. For me, any reparations framework that does not include the incarcerated people and formerly incarcerated people is not a reparations framework. It is a public relations handbook. And this is not charity. I'll say it. This is not charity.
This is not charity.
This is not charity.
This is not charity.
It is a debt payment. The harm was real. The theft was documented. They kept the books. They kept the receipts. They kept the ledgers because they are proud of what they have done. And the bill is overdue. The question is not whether America can afford reparations. The question to me is, can we truly abolish prisons without reparations? It is the way it creates profit. So what I want folks in this room to do, there's three things that came to mind. The first thing is kill the exception clause. Say, kill the exception clause. Kill the exception clause.
Kill the exception clause.
Not reform it, strike it. There's an abolition amendment in Congress to remove those words from the 13th Amendment. And there are still constituencies, still constituents across the country that carry the same language in their own founding documents. State by state, voters have begun to strike it. Colorado, Utah, Nebraska, Alabama, Tennessee, Vermont. But in 2024, something interesting happened. One of them progressive blue states, California, put it on the ballot, and California said, we don't want that. Don't strike that. They said no. What tells you this isn't a red state or a blue state problem. It tells you that the majority of Americans, when asked directly whether they would keep the right to force prisoners to work, thought about it. See, that's not that bad. You understand what I'm saying? That is who we are arguing with. So let's stop pretending otherwise. Two, build power that does not depend on their permission. Callous means the courts are not coming to save us. Grants past means the courts are not coming to save us. We spent 60 years litigating our way towards justice and they took it back in 2 terms. So we organized a constituency, not a cause. Not beneficiaries, not as a testimony to be wheeled out to the hearing and wheeled back off. 2.2 million of us in Illinois with records, not a case law. That is a block. That is bigger than the margin of most elections in the state of Illinois. And so I believe that we will win. Turn to your neighbor and say, I believe that we will win.
I believe that we will win.
Say, I believe that we will win.
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 I say.
I say.
This is the most important for me. And something I have to wrestle with. Refuse to be the good one.
That part. That part.
Refuse to be the good one. They will always offer you a deal. They will say, not all of them, but you different. You articulate. You went back to school, you got the job. You are the exception. Can I touch your hair? Don't take the deal. Because the second that you accept that deal, you've agreed that that work is fine. And you've agreed that there are people down there, the other ones, who deserve it. And remember that somebody else said the same thing about you. I can't be that person. Nobody's worst moment should define their entire life. That's my baby. people in our communities or in their cells. Our goal is to build strategies in this room to bring those in the community, in their cells, into our movement. We do not sort our people out in the silos of deserving and undeserving. That's their job. Let them do it. Woodrow Wallace, Allen, Columbus, Hatton, they were born to people who were owned in a country that wrote itself an exception so it could continue to own future generations. They did not get repaired. They got 160 more years of the machine running quietly with legal citation. We are not asking to be forgiven. We have done nothing that requires forgiveness that this nation hasn't done 1,000 times over. The time for transformation is now. The foundation we lay in this room will decide whether our children, my son got a lemonade stand, will inherit, thank you, the same struggle of finally inherit justice. That's Gregory, man. That's my homie right there.
Yeah.
Finally inherit justice. And so, in closing, I want to say, I'm so proud of everyone that's in this room. And I know that there's some allies in this room, like reparations, what they got to do with it. Understand that your freedom is intrinsically linked to ours. The same thing I see my migrant brothers and sisters going through, my grandfather went through when he migrated to the city of Chicago. A lot of folks act like it was just peaceful. No, we entertained housing. We were excluded from most labor opportunities. When they did give us labor opportunities, they would undercut us. They got to pay the white man $15 so they can give us $3. And we needed it, so we took it. So I want you all to think about how reparations actually truly benefits you as well. It creates a floor of repair. Not only for a reparational solidarity, it does some things, but it also does some things as it relates to criminal justice reform. Because I believe fundamentally that when a harm has occurred, when someone inflicts a harm on me, what I need from them is a commitment to compensate me for what they took, a commitment to rehabilitate me from what happened, a commitment to restore me, a commitment to guarantee they won't do the same thing again, and I need to say to them that I'm satisfied with that offer. And you may not know, but what I just broke down to you is the UN's definition of reparations. So it's that simple, y'all. So as you go into your day, into the sessions, don't be afraid of the word reparations. Lean into it. Because at the end of the day, reparations is a container that holds us all. Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. I feel like you turn music down a little bit, just a bit. Thank you. Okay. I feel like that is exactly what we needed to fuel our day. I hope everyone feels ready and eager and hungry to learn from the amazing panels that we have coming up. As of now, we are going to take a break. Everyone should choose a breakout session. All of the rooms are in Hoover, and we will reconvene in breakouts at 11 o'clock. Also, don't forget the amazing schematics room that AW introduced. It is around the corner, low key, but there's coloring books, some dope water brush pens that I found. I didn't even know that was a thing. All of the things to help you relax and a light for them. So please, y'all, thank y'all so much. Give it up again.